everyone. Welcome to the Multifamily Deal Structuring Monday. Our guest for today is John Stoeber. Days before graduating from the University of Maryland with majors in finance and accounting, John realized that he wasn't cut out for the corporate world needed to achieve financial independence. That led him to real estate investing, where he currently uses his strengths of numbers and financial models to underwrite properties and manage his assets. He is also the host of his own podcast called The Millennials in Multifamily Podcast and has a free book called How to Analyze Big Apartments and Make Them Feel Small. So here's the interview. Hi, John. Welcome to the first GP multifamily deal structuring, where we will discuss about your first GP multifamily transaction. Thank you for joining us here in the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Yeah. Tell us about yourself.
Well, quick background. I grew up in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., have spent most of my life there, went to school for finance and accounting, and right as I was graduating and heading into the W-2 world, realized that I was not cut out for the W-2 world.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly started learning about different ways so I could generate passive income, so I could leave that world as quickly as possible, and that led me to real estate. So before I got into multifamily, I'd done a few smaller deals around here in Baltimore, just like a little 2-unit house hack, and then I did a full gut renovation on a single family home that I got way in over my head on, and through that just understood my own strengths, weaknesses, and limitations, and that ended up leading me to invest in apartments as a general partner.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice. But where are you currently located?
Just outside of Washington, D.C. It's a suburb of D.C. called Gaithersburg. So it's in Maryland.
Maryland. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then, how did you end up in multifamily? I know, like you mentioned about passive, any kind of triggers that lend you to, oh, I need to start learning multifamily.
No, it was during that flip I was doing on the single family home. There were a bunch of things that led me to multifamily. The first being that with that flip, when you're flipping houses, and it's a great way to generate cash and you can make amazing returns, but there's really only one way to make money on that. And that's when you sell the property, and, at certain price points, you could also refi and hold it as a rental. But assuming that you're flipping, there's only one way to make money. So if you underestimate your rehab costs, or if your after repair value ends up being a little lower, you don't have much control as far as how much money you can make. And every time we would underestimate an item in the rehab, I would have to come out of pocket to front the renovation costs. And meanwhile, I'm also paying for all of the holding costs, the utilities, taxes, insurance, and the hard money expense. And I'm just like, man, when do I finally get paid? And it's not till the very end. And meanwhile, it was just a single family house, and I'm not good with construction and renovations. That's not my thing. I'm really good with numbers, spreadsheets, which lends itself to underwriting and like the financial aspects of asset management. And on such a small project like a single family home, I couldn't go out and bring in partners that were experts in the rehab. Whereas with this apartment complex I bought, my skill set is very valuable, and I don't have to be the renovation expert or the acquisition expert. I have partners who they take over those roles, and I just fit into a team. And so that's why I was like, if I go bigger, I can just leverage my skill set, and I can then use other people's skill sets too.
Yep. Yeah, I think I have been there also in the flipping business too. You win some, then sometimes you lose some if you underestimated.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's nice. At least you have your partners, and then I think everyone has their own lane kind of. Then you're I think good in the analysis portion of the syndication.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. So let's talk about your first deal in multifamily. What's the source of this deal?
Is it, how do we find it?
Yep. How did you find it?
So the great part about multifamily, I didn't have to find it. So I have a partner who I met at a real estate conference who had this deal locked up in March. like right before COVID hit the US.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's trying to get it to the closing table. Then COVID hits and she can't get financing. So it falls out of contract. And then she works with the seller, follows up. And I think like a couple months later in May or April, she put it back under contract and she's trying to get to the closing table, still can't get financing. So she ended up negotiating a master lease option with the seller.
Oh,
And so the team is doing the due diligence, and I'm not on the team at this point, but they're doing the due diligence, working with the seller, trying to get to closing, and they still needed money to get it to the closing table. And at that point, I had looked at the numbers, looked at the underwriting. I knew most of the partners on the team at that point, so I trusted them, had a good relationship with them. And I was like, this is probably as good of an opportunity that I've had in like the 18 months I've been seriously looking for deals. So at that point, I joined the deal, and that was structured as a joint venture. So I have a very active role in that deal as well.
oh, nice, nice. Then, where is this deal located?
Little Rock, Arkansas, 1,000 miles from where I live.
Yeah, remote one. Then, yeah, how many units was this?
So it's two complexes. It's an 18 unit and a 16 unit, 34 total.
34. Okay, nice. Then, this one, is it a class A, B, or C property?
No, it's Class C.
Classic. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then, yeah, what's the story of this property? Like, why the seller was selling it?
So this was a seller who had no business owning apartments, your typical mom and pop. He had bought these properties, I think, about 2 years before we did. And these properties, right now they're in pretty rough shape. And the story is when he bought them, they were in even rougher shape. And he had some construction background. So he went in and he did some of like the very, very heavy lifting. I think there were some structural problems that he went and he fixed. He made some of the units habitable, like barely habitable. I mean, he was slumlording it. And he went in and he just put in any tenant who had a pulse, no screening, no professional management. And then, his exit strategy was just to sell. And I think that actually worked for him too. I mean, I'm pretty sure he made money, but he left so much meat on the bone for us that we could go in there, finish renovating the interiors. There's still some heavy lifting we have to do as well. Like we have to do a roof replacement and some exterior work, but we're getting huge rental premiums on the tenants that we're placing. And just through managing it professionally, we can also get the occupancy up and reduce some of the expenses. And then we'll be able to either refi and hold or exit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I know. I think you mentioned about that the seller was a mom and pop. Were you able to get like a T12 or rental from this guy or?
Well, we were able to get them. His T12 was absolutely worthless.
Wow.
So we couldn't really go off of that, which was challenging. He did have a rent roll, though, which actually, for the most part, lined up with the lease audit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess like this is like a lesson for our listeners. It's like when you're dealing directly with the mom and pop. So sometimes like if it's they're just doing it, they came from maybe like a single family, they don't have this officially like having a T12. So you need to build it together with your seller.
Yep.
Yeah. Then and also take note as well that if you're building the T12 is, I mean, you need the T12 and rental when you're going to the either let's say to a bank or any lending institution because they will need that one to be able to get you. Not unless you're paying full cash.
Right, and that's probably another reason we had to go the master lease option route because, especially with COVID hitting, it was really hard to get financing.
Correct. Yeah. So this one is like is it free and clear kind of no, from or how does it?
No, so I mean, a master lease option is basically the same thing as seller financing. It's just because he has an existing mortgage on the properties, we didn't actually take title to it. So we're basically like paying his payments, and then we have our own amortization schedule that we're paying down principal on. And then once we stabilize it and we can refi, we'll get a new mortgage, refi him out and take title, or we'll just sell it and pay him off.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How many, or like, what's the terms that you have with the seller?
Really good. I think on one of the properties, so we have 85% LTV. On the other property, we have 75% LTV. The interest rates are like 3% on both of them,
Mm,
and the
nice,
amortization
nice.
period on one is 18 years, and the amortization on the other, I think, is 20 or 25. So we're paying off more principal than we are interest, which is awesome.
Yeah,
I will
that's,
say, you hear a lot of people talk about how like seller financing is like the gold mine and it's great. You don't get any money for your renovations though. So you either have to bring
yeah.
that to the table or you have to go raise the money yourself. Whereas with like a bridge loan or a construction loan, you might get like 70% LTV and then that lender's giving you your entire construction budget.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. Then yeah, so the yeah, what did you see like any kind of red flag that stands out in terms of the rent roll and maybe I don't know, yeah, since you didn't get the T12, I guess in the rent roll.
Well, so like all of the leases on the rent roll were month to month. So we actually had to verify that, he was collecting rent for the units and that they lived in there. But I mean, we kind of knew what we were getting into and that this wasn't a light value add, like it's a distressed property. So we went in eyes fully open and aware of what could happen, but not really a red flag. We actually saw that like one of the units, they had a Section 8 tenant in there, and even in like these incredibly horrible conditions, he was getting like $650 a month with Section 8, which is what we were saying we were going to get for that unit after we had renovated it. So we're
Mhm,
actually like, okay, like one, we can get Section 8 in this property, which is great. And two, we may be able to get higher rents than we actually underwrote.
mhm. Yeah, I was surprised too, like because I remember like usually for Section 8 they have this annual inspection, so he
Mm-hmm.
was able to get away with that one.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why
Yeah.
we're like, oh, so we could actually do Section 8 on this property.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, that's nice. At least. Then, what was the original purchase price or for this property or any whisper price?
So for both of them, it was 760,000, and then there was a $40,000 assignment fee because we bought them through a wholesaler.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then, then I guess yeah, I guess that's the same amount that you were able to get it. Nothing low. Okay.
Hmm.
Then, what was the economic vacancy of this property when you bought it?
It was like 50%.
Wow,
Hmm.
it's a heavy lift. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is a heavy lift.
No, nice, nice. Then I think yeah, you get more money. I guess like more kind of upside once you are able to make this a 90%. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, the distress stuff is kind of what everyone's running away from, and for good reason, because there's this eviction moratorium that makes it
Oh
really
yeah.
hard to get the tenants out who don't pay. But my view is kind of like I've been trying to get into a deal for so long, and sometimes I think being able to underwrite actually hurts me because I see a lot of deals and I'm like, they're not very good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this was one that made sense to me. I was just like, there's a lot of meat on the bone. We're buying it at an extremely low cost basis for unit. So like price per unit was extremely low.
Okay.
I was like, I don't know when I'm going to get an opportunity this good again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And but was there any current tenant that was not paying that in for the 34 units, the all in all?
Oh yeah, no, there's a ton that weren't paying.
Oh
And
wow.
we still have some of them because we can't evict them,
Yeah.
but we filed eviction on all of them that have really high balances and aren't working with us. Some of them are writing it out, and they're gonna get evicted because like one didn't even show up to court, so
Oh yeah, that
he can't use the moratorium to say he can stay.
correct. Yeah.
And then we filed eviction on a few others, and they just left, so they didn't even try to fight it. I don't
So
even
that,
know, like in this class of property, if these tenants really even know about the eviction moratorium. It's not like us and our property management manager are going around telling them like, hey, by the way, if you give this judge a piece of paper, like you're not going to get evicted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Then, oh yeah, I guess this is a JV deal, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Then, what's your business plan on this property?
Well, we kind of have it broken out into phases and it keeps changing. So originally we were going to raise money uh, through private lenders, rehab some of the units, and then refinance into a construction loan. But we keep running the numbers, and like the seller financing terms are so good
Mm-hmm.
that it's cheaper for us to continue raising money through promissory notes and offering investors between 9 and 12% than it is to go refinance into like some hard money loan at 7%. So right now, I think our first phase is we're going to get this thing renovated, take care of a lot of the deferred maintenance. Like I know we have to replace a roof. There's some other exterior work that we have to do as well, and get the occupancy up to where it's cash flow positive. And then at that point, we're going to kind of assess the landscape and just how much work it is. I mean, it is a small property and our closest partners are a 4-hour drive away.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to see, do we want to just sell it and take our profits right now and kind of like tack this on as our first win? Or do we want to keep up with the renovations and fully stabilize the property and then refi? And they both have their advantages. Like the refi would be huge because this property or the portfolio will easily be worth over $1 million. And we could go get an agency loan or a HUD loan on the property, which means we would all get an opportunity to sign on the loan, which opens up the door to becoming a KP down the road on future deals. And
Mm-hmm.
KP stands for key principal, so it just means you're signing on the loan.
Yeah. 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 I think that's good. Like, or let's say if you're able to bump up the price of these properties, you can even, because if it's you purchase it like maybe less than 70% or 80% the value after it will be all stabilized, you can even refinance and you don't have any more money in the deal.
Yeah, and that could definitely happen.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Because I think 800,000, I think that's doable. Then if you will be able to clean up the property, yeah, that would be
Mm-hmm.
great. Yeah.
I think you really also have to consider like how old the property is though and the type of construction. If this were a newer property, I would definitely be inclined to hold on to it longer because it would have more updated systems. Whereas something older, I'm worried that we're going to have to keep injecting
Oh,
capital
okay.
in it to maintain it. Where it's like if you just do the business plan early, replace the roofs and then sell it a year later, all the money you just invested in CapEx still has a really long useful life that your new buyer can take
Mhm.
full advantage of. Whereas if we hold it for 5 years, that stuff's starting to wear down again and your new buyer
Value
is going to
change.
account. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what was the year built for this one? You know.
So one was 1973 and the other was 1966.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's pretty old. Yep.
Right.
Okay. Then yeah, I guess let's go to the next section of this one. I know you mentioned about that you were not on the due diligence, but do you recall, let's say, what your partners have done during the due diligence phase for this property?
Yeah. So, I mean, during the physical due diligence, they went to the site with, the property manager, the inspectors. They walked all the units, got bids for the interior renovations, checked things like the plumbing, water leaks, whether there was mold, and just kind of relied on the property manager and the inspectors to tell them what was wrong with the property. Along, a few of the partners do have some pretty extensive rehab experience, so they were giving their input too. We also examined the roofs, and that's how we determined we're like, yeah, one of these has to be replaced because there's a ton of layers of shingles on it. Scoped the lines, made sure there was nothing wrong with that, and then kind of just like assess the entire area. I mean, these are C-class properties and C-class neighborhoods, so checking for crime was a concern. And we did things like called the local police department. I did all of that before I ever invested into the deal, made sure that the neighborhood was good and that these properties weren't, considered trouble properties, and they weren't. And then just doing things like going on city data and market nomad and checking like median income for the area, making sure that you know what you're going to get into. And then for the financial due diligence, it was just, we couldn't really do much with the T12. When I'm doing my underwriting, I'll like call the tax assessor's office, or if you have like a tax appeals attorney, you can call them and figure out how the property taxes are going to be reassessed when you purchase it and when you refinance the property. Get your insurance quotes, and verify the utilities if you can with like the utility company, checking their bank statements, trying to get invoices from them. Because there are certain expenses that will change when you take over a property, like the property taxes, but like your utilities, water, electric, gas, they kind of tend to stay more constant from owner to owner. And that's where the T12 is valuable. So looking at the previous owner's invoices and bank statements or tax returns to verify what those numbers at or what they are is really crucial. And then with the lease audit, it's just going through it, making sure that you know what like the lease start, the lease end dates are the tenants current, which you can also verify with the bank statements. And is what's on the lease or is what's on the rent roll, like does that match what's on the lease as far as like the lease start, the lease end dates, and the rental amounts? And again, you can verify that with bank statements.
Okay. Then at least the seller was able at least to give you the access to the bank statements. And then I think one thing that I want to emphasize also is like the property tax, as you mentioned. Like for our listeners, you need to always know that you need to check if the area that you're buying the property, if it is reassessed on sale, or does it, because some area doesn't reassess it until maybe every 6 years, but most of it gets reassessed on the sale of the property.
Yep. And that's where having like an actual tax appeals attorney is really helpful, because they'll tell you how it really works. Like even if it gets assessed on sale, you call two tax attorneys, they might say like, yeah, but we have one appraiser in this county. He's lazy and overworked, and he underappraises everything by like 70%.
Okay. Yeah. Then and also I think one more thing that was good that you did is like calling the local police, because that's really important to know if you're in the hood, you're purchasing in the hood, or if ever, let's say there's some crime, but you need to see like how you will you be able to solve the problem, if it's solvable, basically. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good step. Then I guess, okay, I guess like we can go to the, although this is a JV, like for the capital raise, you mentioned about you are getting investors for like a promissory note. How does that work? Like,
so the money is mostly coming from friends and family in our network, and we're issuing a promissory note, which is really just a personal guarantee from like the team, and they lend us money and then we give them a certain interest rate. So it's not a syndication because we're personally guaranteeing the loans. It's not tied to the property.
Okay. Then is it like this money is used for the rehab?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Then then the terms for this promissory notes that you have, is it like a 1 year term, or what? How does it look like?
No, so because of COVID, we didn't want to lock ourselves into a timeline. So it's just until we have a capital event, being a refinance or a sale. So there's really no term limit on the promissory note.
Okay, so at least they will just keep on paying that interest rate for that year. Okay, yeah, that's nice. So at least you're not kind of in a deadline situation, especially we don't know when will COVID ends. This
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Then do you recall like how much was the closing cost of this deal when, or I don't know if there was a closing cost if
Well,
it's
yeah,
a
because
master.
the closing costs were super low because we never took title to it, so they're going to be a lot higher when we go to refinance or we go to sell.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because there's no transfer of title. So what does it? I mean, yeah, I guess for our listeners, like, what typically happens? Let's say for a master, let's say it was just a master lease option. What do you sign anything in terms of, okay, we to kind of cloud the title that you have an interest on this property?
I'm actually not sure off the top of my head. I'd have to check the documents.
Okay.
I just know you don't want to necessarily like tell the lender.
Oh yeah, yeah, true. Okay. Then yeah, how long did it take? I know you mentioned about it started on March, but uh, was that the other person, the wholesaler who tried the contract on March, or was it your partner in the deal?
Sorry, did she what in March?
I know the March, like this deal started before COVID, right? The March, like
Hmm.
I think the person was that the wholesaler then was not able to close, or
No, so it was my back in March. My partner had it under contract, and she wasn't able to
okay.
close because like all of her investors left, and she couldn't get financing. And then
Mm,
she put the deal back together like a couple months later and put it back under contract.
okay, that's nice. Okay, I guess that's the initial stage of the show. Then now to the final five sizzling questions. Any lessons learned that you want to share from deal analysis, due diligence, until like the closing experience? Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have any like key lessons. I mean, I'm learning so much. It's my first deal, but you can't learn this stuff through a book. And like with me, you just like I had to take a chance on this. It felt right, like the team felt right, the numbers looked good. So I just jumped in, and I'm glad it's not a syndication because I don't have to answer to investors. And like you're going to make mistakes your first time going through this.
Mhm. Okay. Then any recommended books?
Ooh, so well, I have my own book called How to Analyze Apartment Buildings and Make Them Feel Small. And that's just like underwriting 101 and it's free.
Oh,
But
nice.
no, I've read this like if you like numbers like I do in financial models, there's this it's literally a textbook called I think Real Estate Finance Risk and Opportunities by a guy named Peter Linneman. And he's like a professor at University of Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll just walk you through like all of these different models for like value add apartments, core apartments, and like development. And that's kind of where I got like my foundation in underwriting.
Oh, that's nice. I never, yeah, probably I'll check that book out.
It's dry though. Like I love it, but I've recommended it to friends. And there's like, dude, like I couldn't get through chapter one. It put me to sleep. And I'm just like, what? Like that was the best chapter.
Yeah, I love also like underwriting. I'm a I'm a programmer, and so I tend to like anything that automates stuff.
Yeah. Well, you'd
More
probably
in
like
sync.
that book.
Yep, yep, definitely. Then yeah, and any recommended podcasts or YouTube channel that you're listening?
I have my own podcast called the Millennials and Multifamily Podcast. So I'll give myself a shameless plug.
Yeah.
Um, I really like Ben Leibovich's podcast called Multifamily Syndication Unscripted. And that's another one. Like if you're trying to learn how to underwrite, he and his partners go pretty in the weeds on that on their podcast as far as like underwriting principles. So I got a
Mm,
lot of value out of that.
okay. Then yeah, I think the fourth question is like this is the time that you promote yourself. What's your acquisition criteria for multifamily in terms of location, units, class? And this is to let everyone know and reach out to you if they have any deals in those areas.
Yeah, so I mean moving forward I would like to get some some newer product in better locations. I'm trying to get out of the C class. I had to do what I had to do to get into the game. I'd really like to be in like the B to A minus space. And, C class properties are fine, but when I say B to A minus, I mean like the neighborhoods. So
Mhm.
I would like to be there, and I can pretty much go anywhere because I can underwrite. So as long as I have the contacts, I can underwrite anywhere, and I could potentially help raise capital. So I'm looking for multifamily in that area, and I can definitely underwrite that. Probably going to venture a little bit into the ground up construction. I'm interested in that model, and
Mhm.
uh, like hotel conversions or converting these commercial and retail properties, because I think they're getting hit so hard with COVID. I think there's going to be some opportunities to scoop them up for really quickly
Oh
and
yeah,
convert
hotels.
them to apartments.
Yep. Then what number of units are you looking for?
I want at least 100 because I want to be able to put a full-time staff on the property.
Mhm. Okay. Yep. Then yeah, what's the best way to contact you, John?
Well, there's a few ways. So I'm an admin of a Facebook group called Multifamily Asset Management and Value Adds. So you can find me in that group. You can reach out to me on my podcast, the Millennials and Multifamily Podcast. My underwriting ebook, you can find that at bit.ly/underwriting ebook, or just reach out to me on Facebook. Shoot me a message. My name's John Stoeber, Stoeber, and yeah, I'll get back to you through DM.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. And I will also put it in the show notes, like all the books and also the links that John mentioned. Then so you can connect with him offline. Okay. Thanks a lot, John, for being a guest on the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jefferson.
Okay. Thank you.